With Dave Cooper Live, we are bringing you the best and the brightest in our industry, and today is no different. We are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch, so please go there and hit that like and share button right now. And if you are not a subscriber on our YouTube channel, please subscribe. So we already got off to a rough start, but Jamie's going to smooth the whole thing out for us right now. So Jamie, listen, we want to know everything about you from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. And once we know that, then we're going to hop into your research paper, research that you guys are doing in the comments that you put out. And that's how we met. And then we're going to get into some of the bigger conversations. So Jamie, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Okay. So I don't know how interesting that is. I'm not going to go through the birth because I can't remember it. But no, so in terms of journey for, let's link it to the whole sector and how I got here, I guess. So I've come from a very supply chain, traditional construction background when I first started out as a teenager after college, working for Hanson Brick. We're a big international group, not very glamorous. And one thing I learned, though, is how supply chains work or don't and how inefficient they are. And in time, I sort of thought, well, this isn't very good. I need to try and do something different. So I kind of went off on a journey of trying to get involved in more of a design / construction background, which culminated in me actually getting a job in a contractor who happened to have a factory, which is the first time I'd seen offsite modular construction about 9 years ago now. And that blew my tiny little mind about the potential for the solution, one of the solutions within that field and what it could do for the sector in terms of efficiency. And so the journey kind of continued into architecture. So I've been the commercial manager of a very specialist architects practice that we were only delivering offsite and modular projects. We've delivered the largest, I suppose our showpiece is the largest volumetric modular school in Europe, which is an incredible feat. I had 330 modules in it and 22,000 meter squared. It's a monolith, about 1,600 kids. And then I guess this whole resurgence of offsite and modular happened in the UK context, which is where I'm based in, when was this now? 2016. Mark Farmer was on the show recently. He wrote the Farmer Report, which was about how terrible the productivity, etc., in the construction sector is, which really resonated with me because my kind of whole reason for being is I just hate how like things done badly, basically. So it's about efficiency and improving it in anything I do. There's always an easier way to do something. So my kind of, on a personal level, I'm pretty lazy. So I like the easiest way to work things out. So, you know, if I can do that in a business context, which we are, you know, why do things the old way if it's no good and doesn't serve you? So anyway, off the back of that report, and a market was emerging whereby we had a new lease of life in that we were getting inquiries it felt like almost daily looking back from developers, real estate investors, you know, local authorities, government bodies that were looking to use MMC as a means of improving the way that they deliver projects, and quite quickly realized that they don't know what they're asking for. You've got a supply chain that's reasonably established, some better than others, that don't know how to give, in the main, don't know how to give what the clients are asking for. And hence BD Solutions was born. I'm not sure if you've seen the logo, but BD Solutions is better delivery. So our whole reason for being is to impart better delivery into the construction sector. Right. And so I suppose that's a good segue into what you're about as well, and how we do that, really. So that was a bit of a whistle stop for you, but
no, hey, listen, this is what it's all about, right? I think it's so important that people understand who the people are and behind the scenes of everybody, right? Because you can put out a research paper all day long. People don't know who Jamie Parr is. And I think it's important that everybody knows who the guests are on this show. Yep. So let's hop into this a little bit now that everybody can hear me. Yes, I did make a mistake. I hit the button. All right. But anyhow, Jamie, here's the deal. You guys put out a research paper, started our conversation, and the research paper is about supply chain efficiencies.
Yeah.
Why don't we start right there? Why don't you talk a little bit about how this paper came, why the idea to do this paper came about, and what you're expecting to get from it? And then also, where can people find it outside of us sharing it on the social media channels?
Fine. Okay, so kind of alluded a little bit to it in my little intro speech there, but the reason this research paper came about, we've been in business 3.5 years now as BD Solutions, and kind of carving out a position for ourselves in the market. And one of the things that we are really hot on is kind of having an umbrella view of the sector. So I mentioned to you in our preamble chat about we're not tied to an approach. We're not a product seller, so we're not pushing volumetric modular over panels over pods. And one of the things that's obviously emerging, it doesn't matter, it hasn't got a regional focus, it's got a global focus, is the whole digitization of construction, supply chain processes. And like with a lot of these things, one of the things that we're seeing is a lot of noise and potential hype, but is it really happening? So in simple terms, we've decided to take the bull by the horns and actually do our own research into, is the supply chain actually digitizing? What are they doing? And how is it affecting their business? So that's the reason for the digital survey. We've purposely kept it really simple, basically to enable us to achieve a wide data set. So we'd love some of your listeners to contribute. It's going to take 10, 15 minutes max. It's most of the questions are yes, no questions, right, with a couple of turnover based and what. One of the questions, for example, is what tools are you using at the moment? So, i.e., Grasshopper, Revit, Dynamo, etc. And I suppose just as we mentioned it before, but one of the things that'd be useful about the language of offsite modular. Even in this opening gambit, I've said offsite modular MMC. We reference in the UK there's something called the MHCLG, which is essentially it's the government housing body, Ministry of Communities, and I never remember the full thing, but Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. Oh, there you go. So they've worked with a number of industry bodies and government, kind of quasi-government bodies led by Mark, who had on the show fairly recently for Christmas. And they've come up with a common language that's now being written into, you guys call it code, but essentially, if there's a government project and tender, we should be using this categories definition for means of identifying. So on there, which might be a bit confusing initially to the US guys, is that it refers to the MMC categories. But all that basically means is that category 1 is full volumetric, everything delivered on the back of a lorry. Category 2 is panels, but there's I don't know if you want to send the link out in the comments or something, Dave, but there's a link to that PDF document that will assist in the completion. But that's literally one question, so don't get too hung up on that. If you want to type in volumetric or panels, please do. So. You're on mute. Dave, you're on mute.
I'm having all kinds of issues today. I don't know if I have a different. Moving on. So we have currently, my question back on this research paper is the digitization of the supply chain. Why is that important? For those people that are tuning in that don't understand why this is important or why it's not important to our industry, what is the importance of the supply chain digitizing in our industry?
Okay, it's quite a long question, so I'll try and keep it fairly straightforward. We're going back to a simple thing in our analysis of this, which is ultimately, if you're a manufacturer or supplier of a volumetric modular or a panelized solution or bathroom pods or any of the components within that range, you are selling a product. A lot of the time, whilst the market is learning, and I'm sure it's the same in the US, obviously I don't know it as well as I do our more kind of local markets, but if you are in a market that is learning how to engage, and I'm a supplier, currently, even from the initial research results that we've had back in the last couple of days, you can see that the amount of projects they have to look at compared to what they win is huge. We're talking to some of them have, look at 100 projects to win one project. Now, if you're being given designs from various clients that have various levels of knowledge around how you design for an offsite or modular solution, which, as you know, is a differing approach to a traditional build, I still have to spend time and resource against my budget and therefore the cost of my final product in order to review which projects to push forward to the next stage of your bid no bid process internally. So now all of a sudden I've built in a cost on a project that I have no idea if I'm going to win. I have no idea if I'm one of one or one of 10. So my odds are not great. So if we can digitize the products within those suppliers, so in simple terms, I have my own malleable Revit object. You know, you've had Joel H on here, for example, in the past, and a couple of the other guys that have got those kind of generative tools and those capabilities, guys at MatterLab, people like that.
Right.
Now, all of a sudden, all I have to do, in simple terms, I'm simplifying the process here, is I have to look at that design. Does it work? Yes, no. Pull what you need to do, space it out, and that will pop you up a populated product that's costed. So I cut down on my estimating resource. We're not saying to put people out of jobs, but you can use them more efficiently on the bids that have more likelihood of winning. I've cut down on my design resource. I mean, the again, in our initial findings, the design resource is a huge chunk of the final outgoing cost. Now, if I can do that on a base level, that's on the very simple front end commercial element. But if then that product can link to my productivity in the factory, my machinery, my cut sheets, my purchasing, so I'm only ordering the right amount of steels when I need it, you can bring the cost down even more across the business to make your product more viable. Now, in the UK, I can speak confidently about the UK and many of the European countries. Volumetric modular, when you look at a like-for-like capital cost, often comes out more expensive. The savings come in the speed and the commercial. For example, if it's a hotel, can I improve my ROI? But if you're able to cut some of that in cost down, all of a sudden modular becomes more competitive. So there are so many advantages to it. So that's the reason for the research project. But our kind of issues that we try and deal with as a business, or our issue that we try and deal with, is that's one piece of a puzzle. So where we see, where we take a view as BD Solutions is we're as I mentioned, we're an umbrella view on the market. So we're looking at, okay, well, how does my digital product feed into public procurement? Does that help me or does that hinder me? Mm-hmm. How does that link into compliance? And so a lot of these tools, they're great for what they do for digitization, but can we help to improve those tools so that they include embedded data around, okay, that wall build-up is compliant to fire code, or the various codes that you guys have in the US. In the UK at the moment, unfortunately, because of the Grenfell Tower fire that we had, the compliance code around fire is absolute requirement number one. You need to make sure that if a building is above 80 meters. Now, to give an example of that up against the digital tool, if that's linked to my digital tool here, that is, great. It's helping me in the factory, but how does that help my project manager that's never done modular before to know if that's compliant or not? It doesn't. Right. It's great if you employ us, which is an advantage to us, brilliant. But in the wider market, it's not helping it to grow, right? And if the wider market grows, as you know, we all get more work. That's our view. So that's the way we play it. So that's our kind of, that's the reason why, really. There's no more to expand on.
I mean, it does make sense, right? We're last, and we say this on every show, we're in last place when it comes to technology in this industry and where we're headed. So, I mean, you mentioned a lot of people, right? And we're going to say hi to some of them are already tuning in, like Joel and Henry and other people out there. So welcome, everybody. How do you take all of these different solutions? You're right. You got generative design, Archistar we had on. You have Joel Hutchinson with Vervia and what they offer. And you have so many people in the supply chain, new people bringing new technology and new ideas. How does one actually figure out what they need and how they need it? And I think that's part of, one of the ongoing problems that we have is a lot of people just don't know where to begin and end.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So I suppose in terms of what we're trying to do as BD Solutions, and I mentioned to you this again before, but for the benefit of everyone else, in the UK, we're kind of, everyone thinks we're leading it. I suppose we're a bit ahead, but not in the grand scheme of things, not that much, but we're quicker to adopt industry recognized terminology and kind of roles within it. So I suppose where we sit is as a project integrator. So we're not trying to have all of the tools. Our job is to find the best ones and bring those to the table to help the client. So in the context of how do you know which solution to choose, why, whatever, I think and this is just something that we push out as a mantra really, is why are we asking the question of what solution we need, and why are we not asking the question of what do we want our outcomes to be? What are we trying to achieve? So that can be various, it can be massive. So let's give some examples. If I'm an end user client, so I am a private developer, and because we've had experience with it, you mentioned Henry and a few of the other guys, we've been working on Marriott AC project, hotels. Take a hotel project, right? That's a different argument. That's about ROI and benefit. Is there a benefit in me building these things faster? If I can get 300 beds opened 9, 12, whatever months, 6 months earlier, then am I going to get a faster return on investment? So that's about understanding what is your outcome and then applying a solution to that outcome. On the other end of it, we're working with housing associations in the UK that are being, through policy changes and also the kind of wider market forces around things like skills shortages, which is a global issue, they're being driven towards solutions around reaching net zero carbon targets. Otherwise, we're going to be fined. All of that, all of those kind of issues in the market. So if you establish what your outcome is, you can apply a solution and the wider network around that. So that a lot of the work we do, particularly on strategic level with a client, is actually to sit and go through and strip out, stop talking about modular or panels or this. It's like, why are we talking about the end of the process, how you build, before you set the route to get there? It's crazy. And this is where I think people are going wrong, is in most things in life, forget construction. If you set out with defining what you want to achieve, you'll get there. But where we're talking is, I want to achieve this. And I'm guessing it's the same for you guys and people listening. You get approached, all the time, we want to do modular. And my first question is why? Like, what are you trying to do, right? So that's a very baseline, simple argument, and it's crazy how nobody does it. I mean, it really is crazy. Like, why are we not asking why? Why are we just trying to force solutions on people? And equally, if I'm a supplier, there's some great products out there, some amazing solutions, but also there's some stories that perhaps are not so great at the moment. Like, Katerra trying to do the whole Uber, let's change the world overnight thing. Is it a good thing that they've gone out for another $200 million? I don't think so, but that's because they're trying to create a solution to a problem that might not be there. Or I don't necessarily agree that the problem might not be there. That's not what I'm trying. That's probably too heavy. The market doesn't know what they want yet. And I think that's, you need to get, it's kind of a two-end thing. The supply chain need to meet in the middle for what the market want. I'll give you a live example. We've just picked up a job off another consultancy recently, whereby there's nothing wrong with what the work the consultancy's done, but they're too much stuck in the future vision, and they're talking 5-10 years down the line, and they've made no progress with the client. And the client rang us and said, we have no issue with these guys. What they're trying to set out is the vision for the future around kind of local siloed factories, standardized design, standardized product, but between now and 5 years, I've got to build 5,000 houses a year.
Right.
How do I do that, right? So it's adding that kind of, you have to have that foresight with that kind of vision. So
this, Jamie, this is a common thing that's happening here as well. Everybody wants to look to the future, and like you said, start with the end in mind. That's what you're really saying. All right, you want to do this? Well, let's go to the end. What's the outcome you want? And it makes perfectly good sense. But it is also the same thing of, right now I'm so busy, right? How do I implement anything or make changes? Or, when we're not busy, we're worried the funds are drying up, and I think that what you're saying makes a lot of sense. So you hire a consulting firm, they're looking way out, and then you guys come in and you look at whatever their outcome should be, or what they, help them understand what it should be. And then walk me through, what do you do at that point? Do you sit there and talk about like small implementation standards or things that you can incorporate into their business?
So I'll give you a kind of a broad insight into what we're doing, but I mean, because it's such a broad topic, there's so many ways we can go. So I didn't mention it, but the BD solutions is better delivery solutions, right? So our reason for being is basically to impart efficiencies into clients. We're basically imparting design, technology, research, innovation, planning, and management-based improvement. So across the piece, every client has different climate requirements. They might need a slightly different part of that. And our job is to bring all the pieces together, largely through technology. So I'll talk about some of the cool tech stuff we've got probably later on. But in terms of the route and how we take a client through that, I'll try and give an example. So let's short form all the conversation. This whole process up front, by the way, can take 6 months to a year, and has done, because you've got so many departments, so many different requirements, so many different emotions involved. Some people make decisions emotively. Oh, I did MMC in the past or Offsite and it didn't work, it was rubbish, and all that stuff. Everybody's dealt with that. So let's assume that we have a client that is a housing association that have a pipeline of 1,000 houses a year, and I don't know, for argument's sake and conversation's sake, 500 of those they build themselves and 500 are developer led. So we've got 500 houses to play with. We work with the various teams within there, commercial, maintenance, because you've got to look at the whole life cycle values. We would look, working across the development team. I said commercial as in, the finance side of things. So across the piece to work out what their desired results are. Let's say we come out with net zero carbon. So then we would help the client to establish the appropriate procurement route to enable them to procure those goods. We're talking about public sector, and the reason you'll notice that, Dave, but the reason I am is because that's because in the UK at the moment, that's the biggest market and the biggest opportunity, public sector and quasi-public sector. And that's because there's a lot of top-down leadership coming through in terms of, there's political reasoning, improving manufacturing in the UK, and all of that, because of obviously Brexit, really, we want to try and build stuff back at home. And then there's also the skill shortages and also the carbon agenda. So we're going to start getting, I think it's by 2025, we're going to start getting fined. So go back to my example. Once you've got that procurement route in place, then we would be looking at, concurrently with that, we're looking at sites.
Right.
And in an ideal world, we would be looking at sites in a batch format. We always say to our clients, stop giving us one-off sites that you're going to test it because you know what's going to happen. All they do is they give you the crap sites that they don't know what to do with, right? And one of the things that we kind of come across is like I don't know what the equivalent in the US, but they call them garage sites, right? So they try and redevelop the back alleys of houses that have car garages on and turn them into housing. And so you can imagine, like, how do we get our crane there? How do we get a modular building? And sometimes you can only build 5 houses. So what's the point? So we would always encourage our clients to look at a program of works. And then we have an analytics tool that we've developed with some of our guys in the background that basically combines technology so to analyze the physical sites. You mentioned a couple of the guys that we'd love to work with, Ben from Archistar and people like that, with manual knowledge and input of the technical solutions. And so let's go back to my example, 500 units, you've got 10 sites to keep it easy, right? So of those sites, we come out with an analysis that says, okay, 7 of those sites are suitable for this system, 2 are suitable for this system. The other one's never going to work because the price point doesn't work, or the site's on a massive hill, or it's got nuclear waste under the ground. I don't know, just a silly example, but it's not suitable, basically. And so when we've done that, that then informs the procurement route and also the buying power. Because, like, if I'm a factory, and this is where it's important, with all of our team pretty much all of us have worked at in manufacturing in either product design or production. You understand how that side works. If I'm a factory, I don't want like a trickle of 10 houses every other month. I want to know, okay, you're coming to me and I've got 500 houses split across a year. And you know what? I'm going to commit to these. I'm going to commit half now on a call off, and I'm going to choose from 5 or 6 types. Great. So that's one example with housing. Each sector's different, each region's different, but that's kind of an overarching
view. You can use technology to come to some of those understandings fairly quick if you just know what the right technology is. And that's what you're saying, and that's what you help people understand. But it's not a one size fits all.
No. I mean, each sector's different. Each client's requirement's different. Each end client, as in the authority, if it's a government job, like this is something I believe that other countries can adopt very easily. Like in the UK, over the last 10 years, we've spent so much time defining the layouts and spaces of school buildings, so that manufacturers can align their product around the layouts. So we now have in the UK a £2 billion Department for Education schools framework for MMC projects. So the criteria for the winning contractors, there are 6, are you have to deliver this to 70% of the building has to be, I don't know if Mark Farmer spoke about the PMV. I didn't watch it, but the show, but he probably did. But PMV is another thing that they've embedded in the government, which is pre-manufactured value target. Mm-hmm. So you're pushed towards that, and that's amazing. You give us a school I mentioned before, but when I was at the architects practice, we did I believe it is still Europe's and probably the world's largest volumetric modular school. I know for sure Europe, but I don't know about the rest of the world. But 330 modules. It's 22,000 meters squared. And that's a volumetric modular school around the space standards of the Department for Education. So it really does depend.
Yeah. Well, let's, so we're going to get to some comments and a couple questions here in a second. But I mean, this is a big thing, right? This is where the government has implemented some of the MMC strategies and the names, right? That, you guys are getting the lingo down a little bit better than we are here in the United States on what we call what we do. But the reality of it is, and I always say it for our country as well, it would be great if our government took the first steps and just started using modern methods of construction and showed the rest of us how valuable and how great it can be for our schools, for our healthcare, for all these different things, right? Because it's like anything else. We're not going to force it down anybody's throat here. And it's such a huge beast. We were just talking about step code the other day, and, it kind of derailed the whole conversation on, how many places in our country still don't even need to follow the code to build something. It exists, so it makes it hard. So let's go over to some comments. Let's say hello to a few people, and we'll run through. And I got a whole lot of sound checks here. We got George Ryman from Phoenix, Arizona. Hey, good morning, George. Good to see you. We have Anthony Good, Andrew Seeley, Henry Mickelberg, Tom Reddy. I know they're all saying muted Dave earlier in the show. And of course, we got good old Joel Hutchins. Man, I don't think I've heard from Joel in a while. What's happening, Joel? He says hello to Jamie Part as well. Jordy Puchinger is saying hello. Thank you for joining us, Jordy. We also have Charles Warfield. Good morning. Al Tunisu. How are you, Al? Great to see you. And we also have Adrian Mitchell joining us today. And here's a question we have from Daniel Small. What is happening, Dan? I hope you're doing well. Great point, Jamie. Don't talk about solutions. Talk about the outcomes and needs. Here we go. Once you really understand the desired outcome needs, the solution becomes straightforward. Now, I know
we're preaching to the converted there.
Yeah, right. Well, absolutely, especially with Danny. I mean, he does a lot of consulting and what have you. So here's the question from Joel. What would the BD ultimate tech stack on a full project?
Oh, Joel, I'm supposed to say Revea. It's amazing, but it is.
Well, of course you are.
No, so it's a combination. So like I said, we're not trying to create a one-stop technology solution, because ultimately everybody has different buying decisions. There's different regional variants. What we're trying to do is create a suite. So for us right now, there are multiples, but the front end is the most important. If you think about a market that's trying to grow, the reason the market isn't growing as much as perhaps the hype would dictate across the world, I would suggest, is that you've got a market whereby the end user client doesn't understand what they need. So it's a combination of three things. It's the front end advice that we've been talking about. Obviously, I would say that because we're doing it, but that we firmly believe that's the right way to do it. Then you absolutely need to link what the likes, in simple terms, they've been on the show, let's do it that way. What the likes of Archistar are doing with the front end, I'm looking at my site at site level. Can I put this product on the site and link that to live product data? If I'm able to generate units using something like Archistar with live product data like Revea, for example, and some of the other guys that are doing that, now all of a sudden at that front end, my decisions are being made for me to a point. From a commercial, okay, I know that roughly that works from a cost point. This tool's told me that the topography of the ground is right. We're not on a massive hill or anything like that. And if we are, what do I need to do about it? So I think it's linking those two technologies. And then the one thing that we're heavily involved in at the moment, through one of our tech partners in developing. So you mentioned on Saturday about some of the secret sauce. I'll give you one of them now. So we're in the throes of, I suppose, it's an evolving beast, but we have a tool called Navigator. And our grand ambition is to create kind of the Windows operation system for construction. And that is Navigator, which basically links end-to-end solutions. So that would go, that the back office for that takes you from inception to delivery to post-occupancy, and it's got project management tools that link to pre-existing on the market solutions. So again, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel,
right?
But the one thing that none of those solutions are is joined up. They're all over the place. So I might be using one project management tool that a different consultancy is not using. Great, and then I've got a different design tool over here, and I've got, the list goes on, right? So we're trying to bring that all together
into
solution. Second.
You're saying an end-to-end solution where you're going to take a
complete end-to-end solution, but that's an operating system that we're developing, and we're launching. It's made up of 10 modules. Some modules are all the back office is done, but some modules are made and actually coded, and we're doing testing on with markets and certain clients at the moment, and others are a way off because the market's not there. Right. But in time, that will link to blockchain payments, smart contracts. It's all heavily focused around compliance. So, you mentioned at the start, how do I know which system to choose? Just compliance on its own is an absolute minefield. So how can we ensure that the test data and systems data, which at the moment we do manually as consultants, not just us, but consultants do that. They say, right, okay, is this product suitable? Does it meet the regional code? We're putting that into using AI and technology and to be able to actually draw out from, if we get the test documentation from the supplier and the current code document, do they match, or actually does their test data not include any of those points, to try and bring up that test data? That links to insurances. I guess it's the same everywhere, but we had a massive problem with the Grenfell Tower fire, which has really changed the whole game. Like, insurers are really they're just getting really risk averse. So
sure, but I think this is such a needed thing. You're right. There are all these moving parts. It is good that you guys are looking at a solution to bring all this together. It is confusing, and there's a lot of it out there. And I was thinking the same thing after all these shows. Having some of these companies come together to form a end-to-end solution, it makes a ton of sense, especially as we grow and we're moving faster and faster, because everybody has their services, their fees. It could probably get pretty expensive and have a bunch of moving parts if you try and incorporate all these things separately.
Yeah, which it's about, as Henry Mickleborough, my good friend, would say. He said, and collaborator, he said, it's about inputs and outputs. That's it. Yeah. So why would we go and try and push our own VD Solutions tech on the market when just for project management you can list them, right? Just for project management. So if I can interpret those inputs, which then feed the rest of the process, I'd rather do that, so that if one client prefers one tool over the other, I've now not got to go into a company with 1,000 employees and completely change their internal, change management technologies, etc. It needs to be seamless. So that's something that I suppose, in terms of the grand ambition side of things, that's something that we will, you'll hopefully see more and more noise coming out of us from. Yeah. So that's kind of I think I wanted to give you a bit of that's a secret source exclusive, because only certain people know about that yet at the moment.
You know what? So, right here on Dave Cooper Live, secret sauce exclusive. I mean, that's big stuff. I mean, that's a big announcement, and I think it's going to be fun to watch. And hopefully when you do launch it, you can come back here and we can show everybody what it's all about. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. This is what's so great about the show and the innovation and moving things forward. And, I think we're going to get through some more comments and questions here. It's starting to add up. And then there was actually a little private chat that started before the show in regards to this show, which is amazing. So let's go to the comments here. But when we come back, before we get into some more of the solutions and secret sauce stuff you're working on, I think it would be really good to hear, what do you think from your mind, what are some of the best technologies that have come to market as of recent, right? Because you're looking at all of them. I'd love to hear your input on what do you think? Like, what makes you go, wow, that's cool.
Okay.
Not right now. Not right now.
Oh,
We're gonna get some
cool.
questions here first, but think about that as we're answering. If you can think and answer questions at the same time, I cannot. All right, Charles.
No, we already had the conversation.
Charles has a comment. Very good point about choosing the correct strategy for the project, and don't get stuck on the method before you know if it is the best fit. I've done a lot of feasibility studies for people who are excited about modular construction, only to find that modular is not the best option for the project. So absolutely. And Anthony Goudet agrees with him. Thank you. And Enrique, hey, manufacturing process must be the same. I'm not sure where that comment came from, but we'll come back to that. All right, here we go. Daniel Small had a comment. The holy grail of construction technology, a true end-to-end backbone solution. I'm rooting for you. Yeah, if you don't know Danny Small, everybody should know Danny Small. One, he's just a cool cat. Two, he's got a pretty good head on his shoulder. Yeah, love it. He does his own videos out. You still doing your videos there, Danny? I know you were doing videos on lean manufacturing and some other things. I hope you stuck with it. Oh man, are we having tech issues?
No, I can hear you.
All right, moving on. All right, we have Warren Betts. Jamie, how would you link the manufacturing and project manufacturing program to Navigator?
Okay, sorry, I thought we were going. Sorry, that is a question. Yeah, fine. Well, it depends because there's two modules within the process. So there's within the modules within the Navigator. Sorry. So there's a project management one, which I think covers the process, the quality control checks, etc., which is just, again, an inputs, outputs. Okay, we did this at this time. Here are the pictures, like some of the tools you'll already be using. Mm-hmm. And then the programmatic stuff is embedded within that. So you're monitoring the program. And again, that's another module. So it's all kind of I can't really explain it. Probably be worth having a talk through, to be honest, Warren. I haven't with the slides. It's easier to visualize it with the slides in terms of how it's all connected and thought through.
Right.
It's a lot in simple terms. What we're trying to do is like bridge the gap between all of the different parts of the process. So like one we talked about before is like, great, you might have the best process and quality control in the factory when it leaves the door. And then we've had stories in the UK where you arrive at site and they've used a separate grounds worker and the site's not level and you can't plant the modules down. Like, that's crazy. So it's that kind of, how do you tie those links up? Yeah, and make sure that the quality processes stay throughout. That's the stuff that we've been working through with our team in the background.
Sure. All right. Perfect. All right, moving forward. Inputs, outputs. Henry Mickelberg, seems like I may be rubbing off. Love it. And then, of course, Henry's never short for words. Joel Hutchins. Right. Love it. You love it. All right. So if I missed anybody, I will come back to you and get to your questions. All right. Listen, let's get to, Jamie, what do you see out there right now that really blows your socks off when it comes to a game changer in this industry, outside of just all the wonderful work you guys do?
Yeah, I mean, it's the generative stuff. That's all we talk about. It's amazing. It's just, it has to have the right stuff in it, and that's where it often falls down. But for me, even aside from the construction information stuff, the front end, the real front end feasibility stuff, the Archistars of the world. In the UK, we've got tools. Similar tools as well. That is just, and other companies, Creo and things like that enable you to visualize what you're trying to achieve with real world data. So that's probably the thing that I get the most excited around. And some of the things are not even necessarily new, but when you use them properly, I mean, we're working on a project at the moment where we've designed the roof structure for a £200 million building in central London. Completely properly in 3D using Tekla, and it's incredible. Right through to the galvanizing detail and the plate loaders, plates and things like that. And we've managed to save 16 weeks on a program. The contractor's mind has just been totally like it fell out of their ears. They couldn't cope. It's like, why are we doing this 2D again? And was like, I have no idea. Like, why are you issuing drawings in 2D? It's crazy. and we designed it in 12 weeks and saved them millions basically. So it's not necessarily a new technology, but like with all of those things, if you don't know how to use it properly, it doesn't really benefit you. It's the same with the whole BIM2 thing. Like some people are amazing at it, and some people have no idea how to really harness the power of it.
So, of course, I knew Joel was going to have a follow-up on your picking generative design over parametric design. So, but it's a great question, right? Why generative over parametric, or are they kind of hand in hand? To me, they're a little bit hand in hand on what they both do.
Yeah, probably I'll agree with you on that one, Dave, and that's a bit boring, but they're not quite the same, but it's not far off, is it? It's how you can manipulate, essentially it's having that manipulation of an object. So, but I just think that, yeah, I'm totally on board. But Joel's doing this on purpose, so I'm not going to answer him. I'll just text him afterwards.
Yeah, well, we all know Joel very well. He doesn't hold anything back, and he just goes for it, and that's, I think, another great thing.
Loves
all
it.
Right. So let's get into this a little bit deeper, Jamie, and then wrap it up. Can you believe it's already been almost 47 minutes of being on here? It goes quick, right?
Such a good topic. That's why.
It is. It's an awesome topic. Anytime we're moving our industry forward and what we're doing. One of the other things that we spoke about prior to the show is the lingo, the language, and how do we turn the pendulum on offsite? Like, is it the best way? Like you said, is it going to be the best way moving forward? It sounds like at least in England, it has already been taken off as one of the better ways. That's why they're developing their school system around offsite manufacturing and modular. Where do you see it heading, and what's your biggest confusion with the United States market?
Oh well, okay. So we've got we've got projects across, as I mentioned to you before, like around the world in terms of on the manufacturing. We tend to look at the supply chain more instead of markets. We tend to stay in terms of projects. We tend to stay UK, Europe, for regionally ease. But I think as I understand the UK market, the issues are around that every state has different code pretty much, right? So how would you get to a point where there's at least some agreed commonality around performance? It's the same issue in different market. So it's around, how do I agree about the commonality? How can I look at, surely there's an opportunity in education, that just the sheer number of schools there are around how that, the reason we're doing it in the UK is because the efficiencies of being able to guarantee your delivery dates. You can't miss the term with a school, right? You have to have it on you have to have it open and ready to go. Yeah. The from a government perspective, if you do it properly, the procurement benefit is incredible because you're standardizing. So I think there's just needs to be, I don't know who does that, but a role around an organization that brings things together. Like in terms of, I'm involved in the UK in an organization called Build Offsite, which has been around for like 15 years. It was set up to promote offsite, and now it's more around how can we pass insights onto the market from the, the government bodies and things like that. But so there's that issue. There are some issues that you'll never be able to change in terms of just the sheer size of the US. That's an issue that when we've looked at projects before, things like road miles and stuff, like I don't think you can do much about that. But it requires a different model, regional or pop-up factories, that kind of thing, where you have, centralized hubs with, taking kind of Amazon model, whereby you'd have core products that are then delivered to a local location to be finished, like, I don't know, a wall panel, you'd put the routing runs and things like that in it, whatever the product is. Yeah. So I think the task to solve is actually, so we talked about it before, I think, and it seems like it's even less of it in the US, a common language or generally agreed language for the systems and products within that sphere. Looking for opportunities to look for efficiencies across programmer work. So any building type that has multiples, hospitals, schools, prisons, etc. I think there's opportunity there. And I suppose that's the same as, that's almost a challenge as well, isn't it? Yeah. To herd the cats, to bring everyone together. It is like herding cats. Yeah.
It is like
herding. I think that's it from an observation.
Well, and that's where I think, we can do a better job from a leadership perspective to kind of guide and lead the way in this country on how we implement some of these things, and the nomenclature, right? The names, volumetric, modular, Cross mod. I mean, we have so many names for just volumetric and modular that it confuses people for sure. Here's a question. Warren Betts asks, are you using 4D as part of the early advice?
Where we can is the short answer to that.
Yeah.
And the reason I say where we can is because that comes down to examples of not having enough data from the supply chain. Hence, going back to the start, why we're looking into is the supply chain really digitizing and how we can push them along a little bit. So there was another one, I think.
Warren, thank you for that question. Yeah, so it was he said this is a good example is the MOG pipeline for the new prisons. The U.S. could do this for sure.
Yeah. Ministry of Justice, basically, they've got a huge. In fact, we're bidding it with one of the contractors at the moment. They've got a huge super prisons program.
Yep.
So they've got four £300 million prisons that are using a common platform-based approach.
Okay.
And that's all written into the procurement documents, et cetera, et cetera.
Love it. All right, we're going to go to some of the questions and comments that were put out earlier before the show as well.
Okay.
I'm just going to have to read them out loud because I can't translate them over to the screen. This is from Simon Waldron. I'm here to understand whether we can get the right people, companies, and even government to influence a lasting change. We know it works, but it's not always done well, and there is an inherent fear of catastrophic failure by some tiers of companies to even take the first steps, especially with building services where it is done well in other regions. And then he made a comment to Daniel Small. So I'll get to that one next.
I like that. I just seen one on there from George saying I'm preaching to the choir.
Oh, yeah.
Feels a bit like that.
Yeah. Danny Small, who had some comments in for you there, he says, I'm here to expand my understanding of the needs of the offsite construction sector and gain and share. So that was another comment. But I think these comments are important to put out there because this is whole conversation that happened even before the show. Simon Waldron also recommented, I'm here to understand whether we can get the right people, companies, and even government to influence lasting change. We know it works, but it's not always done well, and there's inherent fear, right?
Well, another point linked to that subject, it's really interesting, which to close off, I guess, which or nearly there, is around if you're going to change what you're doing, you need to prove it's better.
Yep.
So this is another thing which will be linked to the Navigator, but at the moment manually, which is the post-occupancy value-based stuff. Why bother if you don't record the data to prove that it's better? If you can tangibly, or we, should I say, tangibly as an industry, prove it's actually better, and not all this 30% quicker nonsense. Oh, it's 30% quicker and 10% cheaper. Than what? What does that even mean, right? If you set the base metrics for what you record that categorically show that the energy performance is better, the on-site performance is better, the health and safety is better, people will. It's like anything. We're in this kind of Midwest gold mining stage. Oh yeah, let's all go and do it, right? Yeah. I don't know. It's the same thing with MMC, but instead of it having to be the tangible output is who gets the most gold out of the ground. It's like, okay, if we can prove it's better, everyone will do it. People are sheep, right? All companies will follow if they can prove it's better. The problem is there's so many providers out there going, oh, well, modular's 50% quicker. Then what? Who cares? Why does that help me? It doesn't help me. So that's something that we're quite keen on as well in terms of recording that data.
Well, yeah, I mean, all right. So I got another comment I'm going to put up, but I mean, to play devil's advocate on that, I mean, time is money, but that's it. Like, what is the real value with the speed of modular, right? And it's money if you're spending more upfront for it. That's
well, go back to the point about deciding why you're going to do modular. Why do modular if the speed's not a benefit to you? It's not a benefit to me. I don't need it. I'm a house seller. I build a house, I sell a house, I build it, I sell it for cash flow. Don't care if it's 6 months or 3 months. Don't care. That happens in the UK. I'm just giving a live example.
Yeah, sure.
I'm turning your devil's advocate back on you, but that's the reality. Whereas if I say to him, okay, this house means that the people moving in the bills are reduced by 20% because we've recorded that for 1 year, right? Now I'm the landlord. I can go, ooh, I'll give them a 10% saving and put their rent up by 10%. It's who does it benefit and why? Right. That's the point.
Well, absolutely. I 100% agree with that. I think you're spot on exactly what you said. And I don't think everybody understands the true end-to-end cost of offsite construction. Everybody looks at the initial upfront costs. And like you said, I mean, where's the real value at the end of that cost? Warranty issues, all the things that come out of unskilled labor, everything that happens with that. So All right, we're at 55 minutes. Here's a comment. I'm putting it up here myself because I copied it. Warren Betts. Hi, everyone. I'm here to understand how we can connect manufacturing data sets to provide better visual reports for construction projects. What's your thoughts on that?
That could mean a couple of things. I'm not sure. I was trying to work out manufacturing data sets. So it's meaning across the piece. It could mean across the piece. So like different products and solutions and how that fits. Or it could mean the stuff about how that product data fits into the front end tools. I don't know. I can't really answer that one because I'm not sure.
Warren, if you're still listening, confirm for us, and at the end of the show here, after we get through these other comments, we can come back to that.
Fine.
All right, Daniel Small is coming. In the UK, have different offsite manufacturing companies ever collaborated on a large project that was too big for a single factory company? How did it turn out? Now, this is a great question because this is what's happening here. How do we get all of these pulled together, right?
Yeah. So in short, depending on the system they have, prisons was a good example. Precast. The prisons are built with precast concrete panels, so it doesn't really matter. Like as long as the manufacturers follow the same quality outputs and manufacturing output process, etc. So yes, and that, for example, there's it's a huge project, 220 or 250 million pounds prison that was built by Kier Construction recently, and that uses about 3 or 4 different manufacturers just for the sheer number of panels. It's also a platform approach to the design, so it's all of the issues are resolved in advance of the project going to site using various digital technologies, QR coding to know, so exactly where piece number 10 is in the process, or if it's on the lorry, etc. Where it gets more complicated, this comes around kind of a standardized code and agreement around more of the technical details and interfaces is with the other systems. So they're sort of trying it, but I can't think of any projects that have actually used the technology with, for example, volumetric, whereby they're using common connector plates, essentially. I think I'm trying to rack my brain for what the solution is called. I think it's seismic, which is where, the cages are the same, but the connector plates between suppliers are the common point. So they use the same connector plates, meaning that, I don't know if that company went pop or the project was too big or various other examples that someone can take over. Yeah. But everybody, I don't know if it's the same in the US, I'm guessing so. Everybody seems to think that their product's the best. So getting that collaboration to work in real life is really hard. Now, what's interesting there is if you take like the standard timber frame market, right, there's generally accepted sizes for, battens and things like that, right? That's common. Even though it's not offsite modular, it's common. You get steel frame manufacturers here in the UK trying to produce different steel frame. It's dumb. Why would you do that? And the only way you can the only way you can deal with that is either get everybody to go towards a standard common gauge of steel or whatever, or you have to have, and again, that's another example of why you need the digital tools, whereby it doesn't actually matter because the digital tool deals with the connections and interfaces, which is then checked and, by an engineer, so that you could link a steel beam to a CLT. I don't know. Right. I'm just thinking of examples like, I don't know, we're doing some really cool stuff on commercial offices here, whereby it's a hot rolled steel portal frame with CLT decks for the floors. In fact, the Google office in King's Cross in London is a hybrid using steel, concrete, and CLT floors. And that's an amazing project. It's a land scraper, so it's as tall as a skyscraper is tall, but on its side, basically. Which is pretty.
What do you call it? A land scraper? You call it a land?
That's what they're calling it. I'd never heard that before. It made me smile. It's a land scraper because it's the same height as a I think it's a 30-story building, but on its side, and it's 10 stories high.
Got it. So what is, with the data sets, and this is something that we've had some conversations about, the raw material suppliers, the steel, the rolled form, the cold rolled steel forms and all that. If the data could be shared between the raw supplies and the manufacturing equipment and the end user, it definitely makes customizing what you need a little more simple. Does it not? Or do you still feel that without that, you would have to have standardization? But do you need standardization if you can use the data to actually create what you need for a project?
Okay, so I'm answering in a slightly different way just because my head's on that track, and I'll hopefully come back around to it.
Yeah.
I tell you the reason why they don't do it. The suppliers, particularly the steel ones, is not skepticism. They charge to change they great. Oh, I need to change the jig on this to make a different grade of steel, and I charge for that change. Why would I'm making money from that? What's my benefit to move away from doing that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you bring in the client-driven technical specification, I don't care if you're making money for it, mate. I need it for this price. Right. So yes. So in answer to your question, yes, I think it can reverse things the other way, but it has to be, I think, critical to that. It has to be client-driven. So whether that's the government writing it into code and procurement, or whether that's the private developer, right, being innovative in how they do things. If you haven't got that top-down buy-in, the supplier can have the best product ever, but it's never gonna work. Never gonna work.
Perfect. All right, here we go. We got Joel's
shock. Joel, can you stop asking now? You're boring.
Well, let me put it up because we are unedited, so we're gonna share everything. And Henry has a simple fix. He says a simple fix for the U.S. would be the standardization of MMC offsite categories at the national level.
Yeah, I think that comes down to the language thing, doesn't it? We were talking about before, having a common approach to it.
For sure. Absolutely. We struggle with it big time. Joel, I wonder how you could ever use 4D in the early stages without the relevant data. I knew he was going to ask that.
That's a comment. That's what I said. That's why I'm saying it's difficult to do, because if you haven't got the data, then you can't do a great deal, can you? No. So,
all right, here we go. George Ryman, from my experience, each medium, lumber, steel, CLT will have its own advantageous sizes and dimensions. Trying to conform one medium to another primary size means that you may not realize all of the potential benefits.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then the last question, LinkedIn user. I'm not sure who this is. I'll have to look on LinkedIn. How can suppliers get on board? We are willing. Who is that?
That's a secret one. How can you get on board?
They didn't pop up in my feed here with their names, so I'll have to go back.
I think there's quite a few things you can get on board with. It depends where you are, I suppose, and how either give us a shout or give Joel a shout, or it depends what you're trying to do. Obviously we don't know who it is, so
yeah. And Jen, if you know who that is, send it a message so I can give him credit for the question, if you don't mind. All right. Simon Waldron, how can suppliers get on board? All right, so I think it was Simon. Thank you, Simon. Appreciate it. All right, listen, we are over an hour already. I think this has been a great conversation. So I'm going to wrap this up with Jamie. What is the most important thing that you think people should know about you and BD Solutions? We don't want to miss anything. Hold on. Sorry, one more question. We got other ones popping up. Let's see. Warren Betts, to qualify his original question, if you remember, he asked earlier, there is no transparency which components is being manufactured to enable better communication to the construction teams. Mm-hmm. Let me go back up to his original question.
Link that in.
I think this was it, right? Are you no?
There's the next one, I think.
Yeah. Let me see here what we got. I think it was up higher, maybe. Give me 1 second.
No worries. I couldn't remember it, to be fair. It was a long one.
All right. We'll look. All right. Well, I'm looking for that, and we'll come back to it so we do answer it. Why don't you tell me what it is that everybody should know about you that's super, super important? And Warren, I'm going to go through here and try and find the.
Okay, so that's another secret sauce section. So I'll throw that in. So 2 more pieces of barbecue sauce, as you Americans like. I'll give you, but I can't tell you too much. So you'll have to contact me if you're interested. So I've given you Navigator, which was a big one. So one of the things that we've had to do as a business, or but we've been mindful to do just as a buffer, but actually it's become more than that, is actually look into business resilience-based technologies that can be used for multiple applications. We're obviously focusing on construction, but obviously you could use it with anything. So that's around what we would refer to as COVID management tools. So we have developed with our technology partner 2 COVID management tools. One is a digital tool, which is a site-based, kind of track and trace tool really for health and safety. So we're getting a huge traction with that from main contractors because that enables you to have a device whereby you can be notified if you're too near to someone on the site, keeping the sites open and making sure that you're giving that comfort to your staff, that you are secure. That can also be used for a productivity based tool to anonymously track movement, so that you can, I don't know, say for example your deliveries are coming in the wrong side and all your team are spending an hour on the wrong side of the site when the delivery needs to be at the other site. You can use that to inform your planning. And then the other thing that I think it's cool for you guys to know that we're doing is also digital antigen testing as well, which enables you to keep moving and keep open. So we have a fully designed and compliant technology. We're speaking to some of the big multinationals, Unilever and alike, on that, but that can be used across a number of construction based applications. I mean, we've actually just come across today our first tender where there is a quite considerable score against how you would deal with COVID management in that bid opportunity. So that's something that's open to all. So if there are any contractors, it's relevant to manufacturers, etc., that are concerned about that, get in touch, because that's something that's going to, based on the initial conversations, that's going to go off in a big way.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I think so. What is that? Is that 2 or 3 secret sauces you have that you guys?
I've given you 3.
Is there more than 3 that we should be looking for?
To be honest with you, if you like the biggest size, so the large size bottle is Navigator. I think we really think that, it's going to take. Let's not sit here and say, oh yes, ready for market. It's going to take a while to properly test the back of house, but the back of house stuff is there and it's made. So, let's be honest, it's probably 12 to 18 months at least, but we'll still beat most of the pack, I think. And then the kind of business resilient COVID type tools. Interesting that, for example, the track and trace app uses the same technology that some of the European governments have been using successfully. Not ours, by the way, because the UK has been absolutely useless at it. But it uses the technologies that Germany and Austria and places like that have been using. So it's all approved technology, and it links to you. Yeah. So I don't know, I suppose it's not linked directly to construction, but one of the cool things we're pitching it for is to enable sports events to reopen. So if you can get a 15-minute test that links to your own ID, which also links to your ticket, you do your test, you wait in a secure location, you get your negative and you scan and off you go and you can watch the game. So it's huge, crazy conversations with organizers of major sports tournaments and stuff like that. So right. So they can get it. Well, it's interesting, right? So that's a huge data thing, to be able to track and respond to, and I can see how it could be used on job sites, right, versus sports events, especially on large commercial sites like Marriott hotel builds and things of that nature. All right, here was Warren's question or comment, and then we'll get down as well. How would? Oh yeah, no, we did that one. That was it was a long question that could have meant a couple of things. Man, there's a lot of them in here. Give me a second. It's good though. Everyone's listening. Warren, copy, and that's all right. They can listen all they want. There's a whole lot happening here. Warren, resend that comment, or Jen, if you could put it up there, if you know exactly where it's at, that would help me out. There's way too many comments for me to sit here and scroll through and pick it out of it. All right, Tom Reddy from Synergy Steel says, great topics, guy. I love hearing about these opportunities. Synergy Steel is looking forward to your road show. Thank you, everybody. And yes, we do have a road show coming up. I appreciate you plugging that, Tom. We are hitting the road, and we're going to travel this country, and then we're going to Europe as well once all this lightens up and we can come visit all of our friends over there, like BD Solutions, who I'm sure has great projects that we can go look at, and other manufacturers to deal with. All right, what else do we have in here? Phil Schatz says, investors increasingly, I suggest, want to know more about how something is going to be built. Construction erection sequences can help non-construction pros get a faster understand of a general approach, so it's absolutely applicable to start early. Thank you very much. All right, and then here it is, Simon Waldron. It was suggested that there may be a roundtable discussion. When can we do this? Yeah. So I do think this would be a good idea. Would you be up for that, Jamie, to do? Yeah, no, it's always good. It's always good to bounce ideas around live, because as long as you have people that don't all nod and agree with each other, then it's fine. Well, you know what? I think that's a great point. But the whole idea would not to be have that. It would be have a different views and everybody bringing a different opinion, so we can have a real conversation and an honest conversation, because that's the only way we're moving forward. Mm-hmm. No, that'd be cool. No, I really enjoyed that. That went really quick, didn't it?
I just love how so laid back you are with this whole thing. I love it. It's all in your brain and you're passionate about it and it just flows. And I think that's what makes it so great. Listen, everybody, if you are not linked to Jamie on LinkedIn, this is where he does a lot of his conversation and a lot of his networking and growing what he does. Here you go down in the comments, Jamie Parr, but you can just look him up. He's also tagged in all of these. Please go there, like and follow him right now. We're also going to replay this here, I'm sure, over the next few weeks as well, micro content bits of it. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us today. And if there's any more questions out there, put them in the comments and tag Jamie, and I'm sure he'll respond to you.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate that. Thanks
You're very welcome. So, Jamie, don't go anywhere. We're going to do our outro. Everybody else, listen, I really appreciate you guys joining us today. And since my intro was cut short, I'm going to do it at the end because we are bringing people in the processes that are building it better. Our guests include topics around building systems, building science, building codes, and the tech used to build it better. Codes are changing, boundaries are changing, and we're bringing you to you a global view of construction and innovation evolution. We're seeking out the best and the brightest in construction and discovering all the ways that innovative buildings come to life. And if anybody out there knows somebody who's doing it better, let us know. We'd love to have them on this show with us. I'm Dave Cooper, Jamie Parr. Jamie, thanks so much. Everybody else, we will see you tomorrow, right? It's Monday. We'll see you tomorrow, Building Modular with Jennifer Cooper at 1 p.m. Eastern. Jamie, I'll come right back to you. Bye, everybody.
No problem. See you in a bit.